Today is the beginning of March Madness. I am Jordan Frank. I am joined, as always, by Ben Rasa. Ben, how you doing this morning? Again, we hit the big time. We have Alex Baker joining us.
Yeah, feels good. This is it. I've been saying I feel like for weeks we're in the home stretch. This is actually the home
No
stretch.
matter
We
how
got about an hour
carefully you
left.
take care of your upholstery,
Alex is
accidents.
here. We're ready to talk all things March Madness.
Alex, how you feeling this morning? You excited?
Yeah, dude, I'm stoked. This is the point of the day where we all have the perfect bracket and we're all winning $1 million. So I'm not looking forward to my bubble being burst, but hopefully one of the three of us will take it down.
I think we all have a pretty good chance. With all the content and all the time we put into this, I'm sure one of us is going to take this down, or one of our viewers. So we have a ton of content and information on our website. I want to start there. As you guys know, we put together a really incredible premium March Madness package. For $30, you get access to all of Awesemo's player projections and ownership projections. It's not too late to get that package. I know DraftKings and both FanDuel have added a ton of slates for today, and will continue to do so into tomorrow and throughout the weekend. So anybody who's looking to get an edge on the DFS side of things, make sure to check out our package. It's really valuable, and I've certainly been using it and looking forward to getting involved with some DFS contests. We also have a tournament bracket contest here at Awesemo. We'll put a link in the chat. I know it's through Yahoo, and the password is Awesemo, lowercase a. So make sure to join that. Alex, I know there was some talk yesterday about doing a coaching session. Is that the prize on the table right now?
Yeah, the winner is, we've never done any contest with this kind of prize, but the winner is going to get a 30-minute coaching session from me on DFS, and right now there's about 200 people, so I think your odds to jump in there and win it are pretty good.
Yeah, that's an amazing prize. Not to tout you too much, but that would be pretty incredible to win that. So make sure to join our Awesemo Bracket Challenge. Bracket Challenge is the name of the game. This is the Live Before Lock show. It's not your traditional Live Before Lock. I don't envision injury news coming in or really some last-minute breaking news. But what we wanted to do is go through brackets, talk about it from a betting perspective, also straight up just advancing in brackets, just kind of do that last minute assistance for those who are out there, doing the last minute bracket work and trying to get something submitted, to win your office pool or, with your friends or whatever it is. So we did a video on Monday talking about kind of general bracket strategy and how to attack a bracket. I guess let's start with Ben. Has anything changed kind of with your overall perspective on the tournament? Do you want to get into who you're looking at towards the end here, or we can get into that further on?
Yeah, nothing's really changed. The biggest thing for me, and I'm in a couple different size pools, some smaller, where you got to be a little, I think, more conservative. Maybe make a couple stands. And we've been hitting this point the whole week. If you're in a giant pool, if you're trying to win $1 million against 1 million people, it's okay to have a crazy team coming out. You want to do something like that. So, it's just making sure I'm pretty comfortable with the balance. Like you said, there's not a ton. I will say, for people watching, two things did happen. Frank Howard on Syracuse, who's arguably, one of their best players, is suspended. So he's gone. And PJ Washington on Kentucky is ruled out with a foot against Abilene Christian. I think that's more precautionary. They don't need him, obviously, in this first round. So those are a couple housekeeping notes. Other than that, though, it's just trying to find the right balance. Now we've seen the play-in games. I thought Arizona State looked pretty good last night. I have them as a serious threat to beat Buffalo. Just to throw that out there.
That's quite a tease there. We'll get into that game for sure. How about you, Alex? How are you feeling kind of from a big picture perspective? Anything changing in your analysis or kind of steady with what we've been talking about over the last few days?
Yeah, I guess I gotta go put Abilene Christian in my bracket now. I think we came up with a really good strategy on the show yesterday with Ben and Chris, and the strategy we laid out is you want to maximize your chances of your winning conditions being met. So I made this bracket on the show for our pool with has 200 people right now. I think that's like the right size for this kind of strategy. Basically, the plan was to take a couple of big stands and then go chalk with the rest of my bracket. So what I did is I picked Iowa State to make a huge run and make the Final Four, and I picked Tennessee as well, to a slight underdog to make the Final Four. So I feel like if one of those two teams makes it, I'm going to have a really great shot at winning the tournament. But I didn't want to pick them to go all the way, because if they get to the Final Four, I'm not going to need extra points from them winning the tournament, because no one's going to get those points. So that's why I have Duke winning it, so that I'm boxing out, as Ben puts it, all those people who have Duke to win that might not get the Final Four right.
Yeah, that's a good way. I really like the phrasing there, like the boxing out and trying to anticipate what your opponents are going to be doing in this sort of bracket challenge. You guys did a great job yesterday. I don't want to go through game by game like you did yesterday. I thought you guys all did a great job in analyzing each game and laying out strategy that you just mentioned, Alex. I think everybody should go back and watch that, and we'll be sure to link to that video, in this chat too. That's something you guys should look at, as we get close to the end here. But today I wanted to also go through the brackets, talk about some games that jump out to us, certainly from a betting perspective, and then talk about kind of odds to get out of a region, certain features to win it all, try to see where we can find some value, where we can maybe pick up a few units in addition to the $1 million that we're going to win with the bracket. There's no reason we can't do both, right?
That's right. Smart.
I wouldn't mind coming out with $1,100,000.
Exactly. That's a win right there. We can win $100 today. Everybody's happy. So why don't we start? Let's just go through the brackets here. And like I said, I don't want to do game by game, but the East region, we've talked about Duke ad nauseum. Everybody knows about Zion and Cam Reddish and RJ Barrett. Everyone knows kind of what Duke brings to the table. Talking it from a betting perspective, they're obviously a huge favorite. The number is right now 27 that they're laying. Ben, do you have any thoughts on this game specifically, or is this one we can just kind of move on to the next one?
Yeah, for me, a spread like that, it's, if Duke wants to win by 40, they can. If they slow off the gas, they're going to win by 20. There's really no reason. North Dakota State, they got, a nice win last night. Good for them. This is one, I don't pay too much attention to, obviously, on the betting side. There's a lot of better, competitive games out there I think are easier to analyze.
Well, let me throw out an argument here. So Duke is by far the most popular team to bet on. So correct. The public money is going to be betting on Duke in every game they're in, basically. So do you think that creates an opportunity where the sports books are kind of moving the line a little bit towards Duke, and maybe you can bet the other side, a spread obviously in this case, and maybe even make money?
I think that's absolutely the case. I think the Duke Lions get shaded more than a point or two pretty much the entire season, and certainly into the tournament where you have so much more public money coming in on Duke. Against the 16 seed, it's tough to kind of quantify how many extra points they might be getting, but I think the books will always kind of play that bias towards Duke. It's tough to bet them as such a huge favorite, but something that I've been looking at that kind of gives me a little bit of pause with Duke. And again, just their talent is so overwhelming that at the end of the day, it may not even matter. But this team is just not that great of a shooting team. And, if you can slow Zion down, which of course is easier said than done, I think there is a template to beat Duke. Now we're talking about first round. Obviously that's not going to happen. And we'll talk about it as we break down the bracket a little bit more. But just something to keep in mind, that I've been looking at. And I think that can go, I think we can use that information, as Alex, as you said. I think there's going to be some good spots today and throughout the tournament where we can bet against Duke, against the spread. They're probably going to win most of these games and get through, but there's one game that I've circled, one matchup that I think is going to be troublesome potentially down the road. What do you think about that, Ben? Do you think they're getting a few extra points here?
I'm sure there's some validity to that. With a 16, I don't it's hard, like you said, it's hard to quantify just because there's so many things that can happen in a game like this. Does Coach K call off the dogs? Does he let everyone play 25 minutes? Does he keep them in to give them run? I have no idea. So there's so much outside variance that I don't mess around with a game like this. I will echo, I've been saying this the whole year, obviously, because it's true. Yeah, Duke it's not that they can't. They're one of the worst shooting teams I've ever seen for a good quality side.
Yeah.
I would hope that catches up to them. Who knows? They have a guy that he can change a lot of that and mask a lot of that in Zion, but certainly after these first couple of games, they're going to be playing teams that if they play poorly, they can be beat.
Yeah, something to keep an eye out on. I think we both agree that they are quite the poor shooting team, and that could catch up with them, when they play a much better opponent down the road. They'll, of course, play, assuming they win, they'll play the winner of VCU and UCF, and you guys talked about that game yesterday. It's basically a coin toss. Did you have any thoughts from the betting perspective, Ben? I know VCU seems to be a little bit more popular, at least I think on the sharp side of things.
The game, it's a virtual pick 'em. The over-under's pretty low, 126.5, so not the best DFS game either. Could be pretty sluggish. I lean UCF, to be honest. I did not bet the game. They have Taco Fall, who's 7'6". That's an awkward situation. And I think one of my themes in my bracket is that I think the American Conference is better than most people think. I really like Cincinnati. I like Houston. I like Temple. They've been eliminated already. And I like UCF. So that's a conference that when I have close games, I'm going to tend to roll with those teams because I think they're undervalued.
How about you, Alex? Have you any thoughts on that game specifically?
Honestly, I didn't put too much time into thinking about this game because if the 8 and 9 seeds, they're playing the 1 seed the next game, so it's not really a huge pivot point. You're usually going to pick them to maybe win one game and then lose in the second. So, yeah,
I'm on board with you there. Moving down into the games that everybody typically picks for an upset, you have the 5-12 and the 4-13. In this region, you have Mississippi State as the 5 seed playing Liberty. Liberty is a team that's been getting a lot of pub lately. Really good shooting team, pretty dangerous. They're getting a bunch of points. I think it's at 9 or 10 right now. Ben, do you think Liberty is right to pull off the upset? And then, of course, the question is, can they cover? Two separate questions, but related, obviously.
Yeah, two separate questions. That spread is dropping for what it's worth. I saw it this morning, and I actually have a position on Liberty, and I got it at 6.5. So it just shows
you're
where
right.
that is. I certainly think they have I bet the game, so I think they can cover. Winning could be a tall task. Mississippi State's pretty good, obviously a lot more physical. But I do like, one of the things I look for with these smaller conferences is have they at least, not that they beat, but have they seen some big name teams? And Liberty early in the year, they went to Georgetown, who's not a great team, but certainly one of the bigger school. They played a couple other marquee teams. Then they went to the Atlantic Sun. They rolled through, beat Lipscomb. And I do like that aspect of it, but they've seen teams that are, equal to a Mississippi State. So I think they hang in the game. Not sure it's enough. Ultimately didn't make my bracket, but that is one of the teams that certainly should have a competitive game tomorrow.
How about you, Alex? What do you think of that game?
I think that the Mississippi State's probably a pretty big favorite there, so I'm not looking to get too cute.
Yeah,
I know also. Yeah, with Liberty, they also, not that this is that quality of a win, but they did beat UCLA, earlier in the season, when people thought maybe UCLA might be a decent team. We kind of know now that they're pretty awful. But like you said, they have played some legitimate competition. That was a road game. So I think Liberty, they're a really good three-point shooting team. I think they're dangerous, and I can certainly see them winning. A lot of times when I bet a dog, especially one where you see the line coming down, I like to sprinkle on the money line, maybe do a slightly smaller wager on the money line. But, that's something that I like to do when I think an underdog has a chance to win the game, which with Liberty, I certainly think they do.
Yeah, I see it plus 240 right now for what it's worth, which is a nice, you put a whatever your unit size is, maybe like a half unit there, and you get that extra bonus if you really nail the pick.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, I'm seeing the same thing. The line has come down, which of course is indicative that money is coming in on Liberty. So that should kind of be a red flag. And maybe there's a way to pivot, in the bracket format. If a lot of money is coming on Liberty, a lot of that money certainly thinks they can win the game as well. And maybe there's an option there to kind of leverage the field. The 5-12 is a matchup that a lot of people pick an upset anyways. So maybe you're not differentiating as much as you think, but we've referenced the Yahoo ownership numbers throughout the last few shows, and those are a good indicator of where the public is coming in, just in picking straight up. The next game in that region that I find pretty interesting is Virginia Tech and St. Louis. Virginia Tech is a team that I really like this season. They have a lot of really good players. They have Shai Gilgeous-Alexander's cousin, Nikhil Alexander-Walker, who's an NBA prospect you'll be hearing about, in a few months, most likely. Very dangerous team, had a really tough regular season schedule, had a bunch of quality wins. They're a pretty big favorite against St. Louis. Ben, what are your thoughts on that game?
So Virginia Tech is a team that, again, I've mentioned Florida State as an example. I think they have a gigantic range of outcomes. One of the reasons is that in the middle of their year, their best player, who I think is Justin Robinson, I believe he broke his foot. And now he's back. I don't know how effective it's going to be, but that's a game changer. Now, if he's all right, this is a team that I think could have really, became a 3 or even a 2 if they really got rolling. So you could really make a case that they could beat Duke in a couple rounds. Or you could say, you know what, I'm not sure he's going to be 100%. I still don't think they're a 4 seed without him, healthy. And you could look to knock them off, whether it's Mississippi State or St. Louis, who's a scrappy team. They won the A-10. It's a game that I'm more taking a wait-and-see approach on. I want to see how Robinson looks. And then I have a feeling I may try to get in a position on Virginia Tech. If they really look like they're firing on all cylinders, they're a really dangerous team.
Yeah, I like them a lot. Alex, have you looked at anyone in those games from DFS perspective or from a betting perspective? Virginia Tech is getting is a 10-point favorite, laying 10 or 10.5. So they're a big favorite and likely to win this game. But have you taken a look at this one at all?
So I think all the ones we've talked about so far are games tomorrow. So today, the first one on our bracket is Maryland versus Belmont. And actually, that's a really interesting one for a DFS perspective. The spread is only -3 for Maryland, which this is a big upset alert. And I think there's some good DFS plays in this game. So the over-under is 147, so it's a little bit above average. And we have Nick Muzinski from Belmont being their leading fantasy point scorer. He has a pretty high usage, assist, and rebounding rate, so he does it all. He's only 7,800, so you can fit him in, and our projected ownership for him is 11%. So if you're going to go with one of the guys on Belmont, maybe you run it back with Maryland, saying this is going to be a close game. Maybe you get some overtime, you get some bonus there. The spread's only -3, so not out of the realm of possibility. And on the other side, we have Bruno Fernando, another guy who also has a pretty high usage, really high rebounding rate, and he also gets assists. So, I mean, these are some guys that do it all, and I think it'll be a really exciting game too.
How about you, Ben? What are your thoughts on this game? Like Alex mentioned, Maryland's laying 3 here.
Yeah, this is one. So I kind of knew, and it's no disrespect to Maryland, I don't mind them, but I knew that whoever won Temple and Belmont, I was going to probably be on in this game. I thought it was going to be Temple, and that wasn't because Belmont is a good team. They look great. So I hear an echo, but I really just think. You hear that? Or is that just on my end? Echo? No.
Yeah, I'm gonna echo too.
I'm good over here.
But for me, it's a spread. I like the Belmont side of the game. I'll leave it at that. I'll leave it at that.
How we sound okay right now?
Yeah, I just have an echo on my.
I'm hearing the echo too.
I don't know if there's a window open somewhere for someone.
I don't think so. Well, we'll keep going if we can fight through this echo issue.
What do you think about the game, Jordan?
I'm in the same boat as you. Whoever won the play-in game, I was pretty certain I was going to be I would favor against Maryland. Maryland, as Alex mentioned, has a couple of really good players. Bruno Fernando, super powerful, big guy, dominates inside. I like him a lot as a pro prospect, but I think that Belmont gives them a matchup that they haven't really seen before. And Belmont's a really good shooting team. I think they're incredibly dangerous. It's a team that I've been watching the last few months with an eye towards the tournament and being able to bet on them. It's the kind of team that you can bet on against a big power team like Maryland and feel pretty comfortable about it. I have them advancing. I think they're going to pretty easily win this game. But it's one that I'm looking forward to seeing. But I really like Belmont here.
Man, Jordan, you're breaking out the robot voice here.
Oh man.
You both sound very shady.
Still got the robot voice?
Yeah, there's like a ton of distortion right now.
Why don't you guys pick it up and I'll try and come back on real quick here.
Alright, that sounds good.
So, let's see. I think we're back in business. Jordan was running, who knows what he had, some windows open, but that's a game, Alex, that I know you were talking about from a DFS side. It could be up and down. Belmont, aggressive team, they like to shoot threes. And when you get that in these tournament games, it's awkward matchups. The ability to get back and forth is what you're looking for. You're talking about that correlation. So if you think Belmont can hang 80, you might want to take a couple Maryland guys on that side and see what we can kind of muster up. In the same region, I'm just going to touch on one more game and then we can kind of move on. And I know you and me talked about this yesterday. I think Yale and LSU is a really interesting game from a DFS standpoint, from a betting standpoint. Now my echo is back, I think. No, maybe not. Yale getting a handful of points here. Aggressive, they hung almost 100 on Harvard in the Ivy League championship. And as we keep saying, if you've seen the shows with me, you know this. LSU's coach is suspended. They're in turmoil. I think that Yale could put up a serious fight here. And when you're getting 7 points, I think that's pretty nice. And certainly some DFS targets. If you can pay for Oni on Yale, I think that's a very solid starting point.
Yep, I think this game is going to be the game to target for DFS today. The over-under is the highest on the slate at 156.5 last time I checked. And there's several players on each team that you can go for. As you're saying, Oni, the leading fantasy point scorer on Yale, and let me check his ownership. He's only 3.6% owned, projected. So if you can, if you want to stack this game up and the ownership's low, that could be really nice. The other guys on the team I target are Alex Copeland, Jordan Brunner, and LSU has one of my plays of the day, which is Naz Reid. We talked to him about him on some of the other shows. He's a freshman, NBA talent. If he went in the draft this year, he'd probably be second round. But yeah, he racks up a lot of rebounds and it has pretty high usage and an up-tempo game. As long as he can stay out of foul trouble, you're going to be in business.
Yeah, that's the thing with just college in general. I'm sure most people know, but if you don't watch college basketball, it's only 5 fouls instead of 6. This isn't like the NBA, and that makes a huge difference. You pick up 2 in the first half. A lot of coaches just sit you. So it's a lot of variance in that, and you want to be cognizant, especially with your big, front court players.
Yeah, especially because you're projecting these guys to play as many minutes as an NBA game. So if they're forward and you have them for 32 minutes, that means, like they're going to get tired and there's foul trouble potential. So the variance in the forwards is pretty high, for sure.
Definitely.
How are we doing, boys? It sound a little bit better?
I think we're good. I don't know what you were running some shady business, but now we're back in action.
Yeah, I've closed all those sites. Don't worry. Now we're all
That's
square.
What they all say. So yeah, I kind of feel like we've hit a good amount on the East. You have any thoughts there? Or you want to move on to a different region?
Let's just talk on a big picture real quick. Obviously, this is Duke region to win. Is there any value you see in any sort of future to win the region? Is there any team you think that could make a run here and get a chance at coming out of this region?
So for me, I think that most people obviously are going to have Duke. If they don't have Duke, Michigan State is the clear second choice. If you wanted to be aggressive, the only team in terms of a dark horse that I think you could conceivably say could make a run would be Virginia Tech. And it's for the simple reason, as I just said, their point guard is back, and that's a wild card. So if you want a very, very deep sleeper, they've already beat Duke. I know it wasn't with Zion, but they could make a run. It's not inconceivable.
That was the team that I was going to also mention. I'm seeing them at 10-1 to win the region.
Yeah, not bad.
Yeah, not too bad. And of course, they would be on a crash course with Duke, and that's always the wild card. Can they get past Duke? And like you said, they did beat them, even though that was without Zion. But playing the schedule that they did and having the talent, and like you said, getting the player back, makes a huge difference. And I think they are a little bit underseeded. Certainly if they were at full strength this entire season, they would be, I think, much higher than a 4 seed. So I think they would be the one team that I agree with you that would be kind of the dark horse. Is there anybody, Alex, that you looked at from the future perspective that jumps out to you?
I'm looking at the odds right now. I'd say for betting, I don't really have any special insight, but for your bracket, maybe going with Louisville at number 7. They're 20-1 to win the region, and I don't think many people are going to have them, except for Louisville fans. So actually, that might not be that good. There are probably a lot of those.
Yeah, I mean that is a thing. But I've talked to people about this. Like if you happen to be in a bracket with an alumni of a given team that's in the tournament, in that specific bracket, if you're trying to make money, do not pick that team. I used to be in a bracket with Wisconsin fans, and they have like 30% in the Final Four even when they weren't good. So that's an easy step one thing to not do in alumni brackets.
It's so true. It's like knowing your competition, and that's so true. As I'm wearing my Illinois shirt, it's not that I can really rep that team at all because they're so terrible. But
I'm UMass. That's the worst. They're awful.
Well, I like my Wash U Bears for the Division III NCAA tournament.
Look at that. Powerhouse.
I heard they're powerhouse this year.
Have you guys filled out your NCAA Division III brackets yet?
That's next week, Joe.
Mine's gonna crush. Louisville. The interesting thing about Louisville, they kind of had a topsy-turvy season, but people don't remember that they were up, I believe it was by 23 against Duke, and blew that game, and that was with Zion. So they're one of the teams that actually has gone toe-to-toe with Duke. Now, granted, I think that left a really bad taste in their mouth, and maybe they just can't recover because it's kind of been downhill for them ever since that game. But that's a team that is dangerous, and they've been there before. It's an interesting game. I think they are the actual first game that's going to take us into lock today. Just kind of really quickly and interesting that they are playing Minnesota, who the coach of Minnesota is Rick Pitino's son. So of course the tournament committee set that up as a storyline to pay attention to. So everybody's wondering if Rick Pitino is actually going to be at this game. But Louisville, interesting team. Why don't we move into the West region? We don't need to really go into Gonzaga too much against Fairleigh Dickinson. No. Why don't we look at Syracuse Baylor? I know you guys broke it down yesterday. Any additional thoughts on that battle right now?
I think for me, this is one you definitely want to reevaluate because Frank Howard for Syracuse is suspended. Besides Tyus Battle, he is a key contributor. they run a pretty tight rotation. So you're looking at, 30 plus minutes just gone. And that's going to open it up. Maybe someone like Buddy Boeheim, who's Jim's kid. He's been seeing some major minutes of late, 3-point shooter. He's flat 5K. Or someone, just again, it's going to disperse just like the NBA. Not all the minutes funnel to one guy, but it's going to open up some value. I do think on the bracket side, it makes a stronger case certainly for Baylor. And it makes the game tougher to project. I like Syracuse in this game originally, and now it's more of a stay away on the betting side.
Yeah, Alex, have you had a chance to, update any projections with that news? I mean, this is one instance where we actually have some player news that's going to affect the game and the minute projections for all the other players.
I did, yeah. I updated everything yesterday after Frank Howard was ruled out. The issue with this game is that the over-under is one of the lowest on the slate at 130. So this is really not an up-tempo game. It's going to be a grinded out kind of thing, and I think having the point guard ruled out is going to make it even more of a grind fest because it's going to take more of the shot clock to run the plays. So I think I probably wouldn't watch this one on TV, but I'm kind of intrigued whenever I see it over this low. Maybe people are betting the over, but man, maybe I always like betting unders because I feel like the public doesn't. So when it's kind of like outrageously low, it's very intriguing.
Yeah, that number has been bet down by the sharp money to get to that low. But you're right. Eventually, at some point, there is that buyback point where even the sharpest bettors are going to go over if the number gets too low. We could have a whole show on kind of over-under strategy and how public betting affects that, and certainly in an environment like the tournament, that would be ripe for that discussion, probably on another show. But you bring up a good point here. It's such a low total. There's going to be some extra minutes, but really what can they do with those extra minutes in this kind of really slow environment? It's an interesting game. One, I probably don't have a ton of interest in, like we've talked about. If Syracuse can get through, can their zone cause Gonzaga some issues? I mean, Gonzaga is a pretty good shooting team. But something that we've talked about over the last few shows is kind of, styles make fights, and Syracuse style is so unique that it can really cause some issues for teams that don't see that sort of style, with their defense and with their aggressive 2-3 zone.
Absolutely. It's, styles make fights. It's the thing. And you get 2 days to turn around. You haven't practiced. You haven't seen, especially if it's a weird zone. They play aggressive 2-3. Like some people run that 1-3-1, with a trap up top. It really causes problems. You need ball handlers. You just need to be able to handle the pressure. And that makes the difference. It's not just who's the better team. It's how do they gel? How do they match up?
Yeah, absolutely. And kind of perfect segue into the styles, matchup issue. We have Marquette and Murray State, which we've talked about, several times over the last week. Kind of turned into a marquee game here just with the matchup between John Morant and Marcus Howard. The line has come down more than a few points now. Murray State is only, I see now that they're getting 3.5 right now. So that line has come down about 3 points from its opener at 6.5. Obviously, a lot of money coming in on Murray State. Everybody's talking about John Morant. Alex, I know we've talked about how difficult it is to get John Morant into your DFS lineups because he's the number one priced player by a significant amount. Do you see a path to getting him in? Is there enough value that's opened up, or is it going to be pretty tough to roster him?
Yeah, I made a few hand-picked lineups on the slate today, and I think that when you put a guy who's 12.7K in your lineup, that just doesn't leave you enough money to spend on the rest of the positions. So I'm going to be off him. I think it'll be a really exciting game to watch, maybe bet on, but for DFS, he's just pretty much impossible to roster. But on the same team, a couple of guys I think you can go with are Darnell Cowart. he's a high usage, high rebounding guy, and maybe he's the recipient of some assists. The question is he going to be on the floor long enough? I have him for 25 minutes. A lot of variance there. Shaq Buchanan also, he's going to be on the court the whole game, but he's a lower usage guy, so that's a kind of a low upside play. So I think this game, it might seem to be like marquee for DFS, but after looking at it, I'm not as optimistic about it.
Yeah, Ben, what are your thoughts? I mean, is there any value still in betting Murray State, or do you have to, or is there now an opportunity, I guess, to kind of go against the grain, it seems, by taking Marquette as a favorite, which usually you wouldn't say that's the case?
For me, I had I think it was pretty obvious that this spread was going to come down with a lot of public money. I like Marquette in the game, so I'm waiting as long as I can because I don't, there's going to be buyback at some point here, but I don't think it'll be too much. And I'm with Alex, on the DFS side and just the life side. Ja Morant is fantastic, but you're paying a ridiculous premium. There are other top end. We have one in this game. Marcus Howard is incredible. Miles Powell for Seton Hall is absolutely phenomenal. These guys are a couple $1,000s cheaper. That's a really pertinent. That savings is lucrative. So this is going to be a competitive game. It's going to be up and down. I just think that similar to Duke, one of the other ways that a team gets inflated is by having a lightning rod player like this. This guy's electric. He's great to watch. A lot of casual people will say, oh, I've heard of Murray State. They have that guy who's going to be a top 3 NBA pick. Let me pick them. Yeah, maybe, but I'm a little skeptical of that.
Yeah, it's a matchup that for sure everyone is going to be talking about, and it's an interesting opportunity from a betting perspective when you have the underdog, with the line moving as much as it is, and these 12-5 matchup. On top of that, you're getting so much kind of support for the underdog here that I think, at the beginning of the week, I was obviously looking at Murray State, but then I think the more I've kind of dug in, I probably am going to look at Marquette. And certainly, if you are betting Marquette, you do want to wait as long as possible because there's so much public money driving that price down on the other side with Murray State. A game that Ben teased a little bit earlier, we have Buffalo, we now know their opponent is going to be ASU. ASU actually looked pretty good yesterday. They had a up and down season, I think is a nice way to put it. Ben, why don't you tell us a little bit about Buffalo and your thoughts on this game? The line right now is Buffalo's laying 5.
So, yeah, I was talking before the show with Alex a bit, and I was saying, when you're in the playing game, you obviously don't want to be in there because you can just lose. But if you win, it's definitely an advantage. You've been in a tournament environment. You get a little momentum. You kind of come in hot. And we've seen some of those teams make a little run. I believe VCU was in that playing game when they made the huge march. But yeah. Arizona State as a team, talent is not the problem. It's just sustaining it for 40 minutes and sustaining it over multiple games. They've got length. They've got I think a one and done in Dort, who's super athletic from Montreal. Really, really interesting player. Good point guard. And they get this Buffalo team that they knocked off DeAndre Ayton last year. Bring back the wealth of it. Massenburg is certainly legit. But I think that Arizona State is certainly ripe to beat them. No way I think it should be 5 points. And this is one that I tweaked early this morning in my bracket. I have the Sun Devils moving on.
Upset alert.
Yeah, Buffalo's a good team, but they're getting a lot of hype. And as good as they did, I remember early in the year, they went to Morgantown, beat West Virginia, and I was super impressed. Now I realize that is a nice little win, but it's not the West Virginia of old. Some of the wins early in the year for Buffalo, not as prevalent as I thought they were going to be at the time. I just think Arizona State, just talent-wise, can handle a team like that.
Yeah, I think you make a couple of good points there. That's one, I was on Buffalo, but maybe I do need to reassess it in this last kind of 30 minutes here before the games tip off. Alex, is this a game that you had looked at all, or we haven't gotten into this one yet?
Before we jump into this, I'm going to post the link to our tournament again. It's at 200 people. Make sure you join that. It'll be a lot of fun. I'm giving the winner a 30-minute free coaching session. I think that the playing games are really interesting because when you see another game from a team, it's going to be the team that wins that moves on. And each game that a team wins, you gotta kind of up your estimation of their skills. So I think you gotta have Arizona State a little bit higher than you might have before the game a couple days ago. But I think that the hot streak here might not be good enough because they're a pretty big underdog.
Just kind of an interesting tidbit there. We're talking about the playing games and kind of that opportunity for a team. In one sense, it kind of sucks that you have to play before the tournament really starts to kind of just get into the tournament, but it does kind of give some momentum. And Ben referenced VCU. They were in that playing game back in 2011 and made a run to the Final Four. Since 2011, which was the first year that the NCAA instituted the playing games, one team who had won in the playing games has made it to at least the second round. And there's also a couple times where a team has gone to the Sweet 16. Tennessee did it a few years ago. LaSalle has done it getting into the Sweet 16. So I think, there is something to the momentum and, kind of getting a feel for the tournament format when you play a couple days before, and then all of a sudden you have this quick turnaround into your second game, even though it's still technically the first round. So maybe ASU is that team. A lot of people like Belmont. I think they're both, ripe to potentially upset and maybe get into the second or Sweet 16 round.
Yeah, I think it's obvious that you can't quantify just having you're just a little ahead in the race in the sense that you just played in a win or go home game, and you're feeling good. You got to win. It is a short turnaround, but. And it's in a 6 and an 11. So this is you're not overmatched when you get into this game. Yeah, you're not probably the better team, but it's not like the 16 seed where it's like, yeah, you're feeling good and now you have to play Duke. It's not going to really matter that you have momentum.
Yeah, exactly. Yeah, there's a big difference between the 16 seed team that wins the playing game and then the 11 seed. Past years it had been a 12 or a 13, but obviously much better teams we're talking about.
Yeah.
Last game in this region, which I think is interesting from DFS perspective and also betting, is Nevada and Florida. That is going to be a very interesting matchup. Florida is a team that Ken Pom loves. They're ranked much higher than their seeding would indicate. So a lot of their advanced metrics are really positive. Nevada is a team that's kind of disappointed this season. Many thought they could potentially run the table. They've got a ton of talent. They've got a lot of seniors. They made a really deep run last year in the tournament. Ben, let's start with you. I know this is an interesting matchup that people have been talking about. How are you looking at this game?
It is, yeah. Chad has been I've seen a lot of people talking about Nevada possibly winning this game and beating Michigan, which I think is interesting. This is going to be one of the hardest ones to project. Florida is played a brutal schedule, non-conference and within the SEC. So they got a lot of quality wins, and they have a lot of just losses. On the opposite, they played a pretty soft schedule, and their record's great. They got tripped up. New Mexico smoked them. Utah State beat them in a really wild game. You said this. They have 5 fifth-year seniors. The team made a run last year. I think that helps, but I'm a little skeptical. I'm not going to lie. I think they kind of cooled off towards the end of the year. It should have been maybe a 3 or a 4, and they just couldn't hold it together. I don't really know where to go here. I did not bet the game. I see Nevada's about a 2-point favorite, which I think is pretty spot on. Give a slight edge to them just on experience, but Florida is a team, you don't know what you're going to get from them. We've seen them look so good and beat a great team, and then they can't, they will turn around, they lose to a bad SEC team. It's hard to gauge which Florida team are we going to get today.
Yeah, I feel like they're kind of akin to Florida State. Maybe not as much talent as Florida State, but kind of that really wide range of outcomes here for Florida. From a DFS perspective, Alex, anybody in this game jumping out? There's a lot of talent on both sides.
Yeah, I got a guy for everyone. Keontae Johnson for Florida. He is 5,900 because he's a freshman. He didn't start until a couple months into the season. and he only averaged 23 minutes a game. But in the past 3 in the conference tournament, he got all above 30 minutes. But the game before that, he fouled out in 11 minutes on the floor. So, I mean, he's got the potential to totally bust, but I think given the price and the fact that he's when he's on the floor, he's the leading rebounder on the team. He has 20% usage. I think that he's a great play in DFS.
Where do you have? I know I've looked at Jordan Caroline. I think he was priced pretty low, if I recall. So just curious what your thoughts were. Oh no, he's not priced that low. He's 9,400.
He's definitely an upper echelon like projection, but the price is pretty high. Not a lot of value on this slate, so it's pretty hard to go stars and scrubs. The other guy on Nevada that's jumping down in my projections is Caleb Martin, but again, he's also 9K. So this game isn't going to be super high paced. The over under is only 133, so it's about average. So in general, I don't think this is a great game to target for DFS.
Caleb Martin, just programming note. What happens? You're going to roster Caleb Martin, and you're going to think you're racking it up, and then you're going to realize he has an identical twin on the team. So it looks like he scores him and Cody. It's like, oh my God, this guy has got 50 points. No, they actually both. So it's very confusing. I cannot stand watching them for that reason. You can't tell them apart.
It's the Morris twins all over again.
It really is. It's like they got two. They got 2 of them. That's going to be a game, though. I don't think you're crazy, no matter who you take, to seriously consider that team possibly upending Michigan. Florida and Nevada are those type of teams that they can get on a run. But it's hard in a bracket because you're like, oh, I could take this team going out. They could go down today. It's a very close toss-up kind of game.
Yeah, Florida is a team that I was looking at. Again, super high variance, but I think if they can get by Nevada, I think they actually have a pretty good chance to beat Michigan. So they're a pretty high seed or a lower seed that I'm looking at to potentially make a run into the Sweet 16. Why don't we close up this bracket? Any value you guys see on a region winner?
For me, I mean, it's pretty clear that the team, I've been echoing this the whole time, Florida State is a wild card in every facet of the world. They have all the talent. They can beat Gonzaga. They can clearly beat Texas Tech or Michigan if it gets that far. And they could go down to Marquette, Vermont. It's wide range of outcomes. So if you get a nice number on them, I don't even mind sprinkling on that and then hedging them out in your bracket. So say you have them going down early, but you have kind of that one outer if they do make a deep run.
Yeah, I like that pick. Alex, do you have any picks?
Yeah,
value?
I like this division to pick an underdog. We're seeing on Yahoo's ownership, Gonzaga and Michigan make up about 75% of the ownership. And then Florida State and Texas Tech only make up 15%, but I think combined their chance of making the Final Four is a lot higher than that. So I think that you'd be smart to consider an upset in this region.
Yeah, I like that thought. Why don't we go into the South region here? We'll kind of move through it a little bit quicker here as we're getting short on time until the games lock. Why don't we start with Wisconsin, Oregon? These 12-5 matchups that we've talked about, all morning, are usually ripe for upsets, and a lot of the public is, kind of owns in on these games and picks upsets without really knowing much about the teams. This 5-12 obviously is two, very big schools, kind of basketball powerhouses over the years, but kind of interesting dynamics between Wisconsin and Oregon. Oregon is coming in really hot. They like to grind it out. Wisconsin, with Ethan Happ is a really solid team. There may be a hack that might happen, which in this game with such a low spread may come into play. Ben, kind of what are your thoughts on this game?
So it's a situation where you really, for me, it's a pretty simple question. Oregon got on a really nice run. They smoked Washington, got the auto bid. They're playing great, and the public has reacted to that, and they've seen it. And this is a team that a couple weeks ago they were not even remotely on my radar for anything. So you're asking, are they really? Does that momentum make them, a threat here, or do I take a team that if you would have asked me, Wisconsin versus Oregon, I would say Wisconsin wins relatively easily. I'm going to stick with my first notion there. I think that Hap on the inside is enough. If they can spread it out, they always play good defense. They can cause some troubles. Obviously, if they had ball, this would be a totally different situation. It would be a different team. I think we all know that. So they are playing well, the Ducks. There's no doubt about it. But, man, this spread is – I mean, you're looking at a pseudo pick'em. That's not what I thought we would see here. And on that, I'm going to still lean with the better team, and that's Wisconsin.
Yeah, how about you, Alex? I know we can get into this game, a little bit later, but a lot of good players. I'll be curious to see how we project Ethan Happ, when that game happens tomorrow. But kind of hard to say right now, I think, DFS perspective.
Yeah, definitely. I'll look more into the DFS tonight. I kind of like Ben's analysis with the hot hand bias coming into play, people overvaluing Oregon. When really, I mean, the best way to evaluate a team's skill level is you take the whole season and you evaluate it based on every game. So if you're only looking at a few games and just basing it on that, you're not going to see the whole picture.
Yeah, I think the public will always overreact, certainly with conference tournaments, and if there's a team that makes a run, like Oregon did. I think you're both right that's a pivot point that we can take advantage of, and on the betting side and brackets, pretty much all over the place. We can get Wisconsin at laying 2.5, like that, like Ben said. That seems like way too low of a number for this matchup. I think that number is indicative of Oregon's hot streak and nothing more. I think Wisconsin can match up pretty well. I'm a little worried about the hack of Hap and how that might affect the game down the stretch. Him being such a poor free throw shooter, but Wisconsin is a team that I do like there. Another matchup ripe for an upset that a lot of people are owning in on is UC Irvine, the Anteaters, against Kansas State, and Bruce Weber, one of my least favorite coaches probably in college basketball.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, hater. Ben, what do you think about Bruce Weber? Is he going to get it done?
I don't know. They don't. I still don't know what's up with Dean Wade. I assume he's not playing. He says out indefinitely. That's a big loss for Kansas State. They could use him. This is another team. They've got some experience. Got to share the Big 12. They're a good team, but there's a lot of factors working against them. One, the game is in San Jose. That doesn't help. UC Irvine is usually one of the bigger problems for these lesser schools, these mid-majors, so they don't have the size. UC Irvine has the size. That's not a problem. They can match up defensively. Spread is, a handful of points. They're obviously underdogs, but I do think this is another game that, it's not a big mismatch in terms of skill. Yeah, Kansas State's the better team if they played best 4 out of 7, but they're not playing best 4 out of 7. So I don't mind rolling with the Anteaters here in a game, but this is a tough little pod. These 4 teams, I wouldn't be stunned if any of them was the Sweet 16 candidate.
It is a very tough pod. Why don't we jump then to one of the games for DFS perspective today, which is Villanova against St. Mary's. St. Mary's got into the tournament by beating Gonzaga in their conference tournament, so maybe there's that bias there with St. Mary's. Villanova is, of course, the defending champ, lost most of their scoring from last season, but with Jay Wright, they were able to somehow put it together and still had a really incredible season. What are your thoughts? Let's start with you, Ben, and then we'll get into Alex on the DFS side on this Villanova game.
This is certainly a tricky one. St. Mary's, I thought that came out of absolutely nowhere. Not even that Gonzaga couldn't be beat. I just didn't think it would be St. Mary's. They seemed to kind of be flat dead, down year for them, and here they are. On the other side, defending champs, it's not the same team. They're no threat this year, but I still think they're good enough with Pascal, Gillespie. They have enough to win a game like this, set up an interesting matchup, most likely with Purdue in the next round. So I think you have some decent targets. The game, it doesn't scream DFS value. These teams are both, I don't want to say they're methodical because that's kind of an overstatement, but they're not exactly looking to get up and down at the same time. Good shooting. Nova can get hot from the outside. So I'm going to lean with them. Spread, over under of 129. So that you're looking at a game probably in the 60s.
Yeah, you hit it on the head there. It seems like it's going to be a slower pace. That being said, Alex, I mean, is there any value you see or any, the players that jump out to you, or is the tempo just too slow?
Yeah, I see one-off that you can go with. Jermaine Samuels for Villanova. He averaged 21 minutes a game, but in the conference tournament, he got 32, 41, and 33. Obviously, one overtime game in there. But he's only 5,300, so you got to have a lot of players in that price range to complete your lineup, and I think that he's not great value, but he's a good value, and he fits the kind of roster construction you need to have.
Yeah, this is another, just from a matchup perspective, that's interesting, in that St. Mary's defends the three really well. I think only Michigan gave up fewer threes per game than St. Mary's does, and Nova just wants to shoot threes basically all day, and you have kind of a high variance style there. So this is one, I think I'm actually leaning St. Mary's, even though I really didn't think they had a chance to beat Gonzaga. I wasn't too high on St. Mary's a few weeks ago, but I do feel like they can certainly cover here and has a good chance to advance and beat Villanova.
It's true.
Why don't we jump, Ben, you mentioned Cincinnati, a team that you like a lot. They are playing Iowa. What are your thoughts on Cincinnati?
Yeah, they're a team again, American Conference, so that's one of the positives for me. Come in at 3.5 point spread, like that. Don't mind if you want to roll, say, minus 170 into something else, kind of bring that down to a minus 110 on money lines with them. Physical team, they have a star. He's not John Morant level, but Cumberland is a legit one. He can lead them, he can shoot, just quality. They're always hard-nosed. That's kind of the way Cincinnati plays. And Iowa is just a team, they really are just blah. They're always sloppy. They're down 15. They make these crazy comebacks. You just can't play like that in the tournament. I think the physicality on Cincinnati is going to really hurt Iowa. The other thing, games in Columbus, not a home game, but it certainly helps that they're going to get that. And then if they set up a matchup with Tennessee, that is a big factor. Cincinnati getting not a home game again, but they're going to have more of that crowd. That helps. That's a big, big factor.
Yeah, the crowd will be on their side for sure. Alex, I know this game is Friday. Do you have any thoughts kind of on the line or any predictions with Cincinnati here?
Yeah, see, Cincinnati is plus 1,800 to win the region.
Yeah.
So I think that could be a deep sleeper you could go with in your bracket.
Yeah, I like that pick a lot. I think Cincinnati is a very dangerous team, and their defense is just so good. I think they can shut down pretty much any team. We have about 10 to 15 minutes left here. Just want to do another quick reminder to get your bracket entry in. We are hosting a bracket challenge on Awesemo through Yahoo. And as we said, the winner of our bracket contest will get a 30-minute coaching session with Alex himself, the top-ranked DFS player in the world. So an incredibly valuable prize there. You got about 10 minutes or so to get your picks in, so make sure to do that before the first game locks. Why don't we just quickly then go through the last region, guys? It is the Midwest region with North Carolina as the top seed. I seem to be continuing to highlight the 5-12 matchups because I think those are often the most interesting, and the committee likes to put together interesting matchups in the 5-12. Here we have Auburn against New Mexico State, which is an interesting matchup. Ben, what are your thoughts on this game?
It's weird because Auburn, they're playing really well. SEC, debate how good you want it is. It's still a top end conference. Thought a 5 for them was a little much. And then they play one of the virtual unknowns. So New Mexico State, I think they have 30 wins already, which is massive. I think they're like 30-5 or something like that. They smoked everyone in the WAC, which is one of the worst conferences. So I don't know how good they are. That's not what you want to see if you're Auburn, a team that's won for months on end. Obviously a talented little bunch. Spreads hovering around 6. I did take a position on New Mexico State. I believe I got it at 5.5. I think they're in this game. Auburn forces a lot of turnovers. That's the key. You got to maintain control of the ball. Don't beat yourself around them. If you can do that, I think there's no reason they can't hang in this game. I'm a noted Bruce Pearl hater. There is some bias in there. Don't like them. Don't like Auburn. But I think this one, New Mexico State is a team that they're certainly live to advance at least out of this first game.
Yeah, I'm on board with you there, Alex. This total is a little bit higher than some of the other games we've talked about. It looks like it's at 146.5. Couple names that jumped out to me, but anybody on your projections that you particularly like in this game?
Let me pull it up here. I do really like this region from a bracket standpoint because the 1 seed North Carolina is only plus 185 to make the Final Four, and that's the lowest of any region.
Yeah, I know like Jared Harper, I think he's priced at 8,000, which seems a little bit lower than I would have expected for him. Like he's a great three-point shooter, averages a lot of points per game, somebody that I might be targeting, in my DFS lineups. We're showing a pretty low ownership projection for him in this game.
It's a good total too, 146.
Yeah.
I wouldn't be stunned to see this game get up and down a little bit. It's just New Mexico State's a total wild card in my mind.
New Mexico State was really hard for me to project for DFS because they ran out such a deep rotation in their conference tournament that for them I have, 9 or 10 guys all like getting playing time, whereas other teams usually have like 7 that have legitimate playing time. So I'm not seeing any big targets for DFS. Jared Harper, as you mentioned, the top fantasy scorer for Auburn, but also I'm showing that his value isn't that good at AK. There's some other guys that are a little bit more productive on other teams, so it's probably a pass for me.
I just want to mention real quick, I think it's an interesting point you just brought up, Alex. So New Mexico State, one of the problems with them is they played in the WAC, and they have legitimately 40-point wins all the time. So the rotation is all messed up because a lot of guys are not playing deep into these games. So in a tournament setting, I would imagine the rotation does shorten up, but it's very difficult to know who's going to get squeezed and who's going to get a bump into the 30-plus minute territory.
Well, the thing is, like, I was looking at the conference tournaments, and they had some close games, and that's kind of the benchmark. And still, even in those games, they ran out a pretty deep rotation.
Yeah, that makes it difficult. And they're going to need that against Auburn. Auburn's the kind of team, they like to be aggressive. They like to press. You need bodies. You're not going to be able to get by with 7 guys out there.
Yeah, it's going to be tough then. I see that there's nobody on that team, on New Mexico State, who averaged more than 11 points per game. So like we've said, I mean, they really have a balanced attack, and that it does not bode well in the DFS space. It's going to be hard to project, some value there. One other game I wanted to touch on quickly here is Kansas and Northeastern. I should probably admit my Bill Self bias. Also not a big fan of Bill Self. I think Northeastern is rather dangerous here. I can see them winning outright. I like them to cover this game. Am I crazy, Ben?
No, not at all. This is my favorite game of the entire opening in terms of betting. Other games I want to see, but I think Northeastern is ripe to win. I really do. Kansas, their name, talk about bias. People see the name. That team is garbage. Sorry, but Azubuike's gone. Vic is gone. Young and talented, of course. They get the prospects. I think this is a true coin toss. Can Kansas win? Absolutely. They're probably the better team, but Northeastern is a very dangerous. Vasa Pusica, just really underrated. Most people obviously have not seen him play. He was hurt earlier in the year. They got hot at the right time, got through Hofstra, got through College of Charleston. 7 points. I hit that line as soon as it came out. Really excited to see that game. I think it's 4 o'clock today. It's going to be a good one, and they're a threat. Another pod. So you have Auburn, New Mexico State, Northeastern, and Kansas. All those teams are very live to make it out of this weekend.
Yeah, I think we're on the same page. I can see Northeastern getting into next weekend, which seems crazy going into this, but I can see that happening.
Yeah.
Is this a game, Ben? I'm sorry, Alex, that we're targeting DFS wise? The total's at 143.
Yeah, I like one player on Kansas, Dedrick Lawson. I have him as the fourth highest projection on the slate. I think that the fact that the spread is only 6.5 kind of makes it likely that you're going to see pretty long minutes for everybody. And he's a very productive player, 29% usage, 23% defensive rebounding. So I think he could definitely rack up the fantasy points.
Yeah, that'll be a game to watch. I'll certainly be watching that game. I'm very interested to see how Kansas comes out and plays. Let's jump to Wofford and Seton Hall, which is a matchup that a lot of people have been talking about. Seton Hall is hot coming into the tournament. Wofford, kind of a dream season for them. They were ranked in the top 25 essentially throughout the whole season for the first time in their school history. They are coming in on a 20-game win streak. A lot of people thought they maybe should have been seeded a little bit higher. Ben, what are your thoughts on Wofford?
Yeah, I feel like I bet against them in 15 of those games. It's a miracle that they didn't have a loss in there. They're a quality team. Fletcher McGee is, in the JJ Redick mold of just dangerous three-point shooter. Shoots like 90% from the line as well. But Seton Hall, as I alluded to earlier, Miles Powell, he's going to be the best player on the floor, and he's one of the best players in this tournament. Back and forth game, going to be competitive. I don't think you can go wrong. The question I'm asking is whoever wins, can they beat Kentucky? That's a tall task, but this is dangerous teams. I'm sure Kentucky's not thrilled with seeing a team that's won, say, 22 in a row or a scrappy Seton Hall team.
Yeah, Alex, any thoughts on that game, or I guess on kind of the region as a whole?
Yeah, I'm liking this guy, Sandro Mamukelashvili.
On Seton Hall, yeah.
Yeah.
Easy for you to say.
Yeah, he's been getting huge minutes in the conference playoffs, and he's only 6,100, so I think you could go there in DFS. For the region, I think this is a good one to pick upset because there's so many teams that are alive to make the Final Four. So I think this is the region where getting the winner right could really make or break your bracket.
Yeah, I know you mentioned North Carolina as getting the kind of the best odds as a 1 seed to get out of this region. Is there anybody else, I guess, Ben, that you see on the value side to come out of this region? It's going to be a tough one.
It's definitely going to be a tough one. I think that, they're not extreme, unlike Cincinnati or even like Florida. Those are really aggressive. I think Houston as a 3 seed can really make some noise. Again, American Conference, I keep hitting those teams. They're going to have a tough road. You're going to probably get Kentucky and North Carolina, but very scrappy team, few losses on the year. No reason they can't emerge and take on what I hope will be Virginia.
Yeah, you and me both. But
That's right.
But it's interesting because usually those narratives, kind of backfire on, this conference was really great this year, so these teams are going to do better in the tournament. I feel like we've heard that before, but I particularly think the ACC this year, it typically gets overvalued how great the ACC is, and oftentimes, they'll go out early. But I really think this year it was so much better than any other conference, that those kind of second-tier teams played such difficult schedules that I think that's going to be really helpful for those kind of caliber of teams. I mean, you're talking about Florida State, you're talking about Louisville, there's a few others who've just played an incredibly hard schedule, and I think you can get some value on those teams just based on that fact alone.
No doubt. It's going to be interesting, that's for sure.
Boys, I think we have made it to lock. Yeah. It is 12:15 on the East Coast, 9:15 here on the West Coast. Let's just talk for a minute. Big picture, Alex, who do you have in the Final Four, or who do you have winning? I guess in your most confident pool, or kind of, what you see the most value in, kind of however you want to approach the question.
Yeah, I'm just really excited now to have a perfect bracket so far, and all you guys are in the same bucket. So let's savor this before March Madness becomes March Sadness. But I made a few brackets. The one we made on the show I really liked, where I picked Duke to win. And the reason I did that is because I had some upsets for Final Four. But in my other bracket, I had Virginia winning because I thought it was kind of a smaller pool, and I thought maybe you don't want to go beyond the top 4 favorites, so I just picked the one that was kind of lower owned. And in that bracket, since I went a little bit of a contrarian with the winner, I went more chalky, just picking the favorites in the other spots.
Yeah, I like that strategy, and I like that show a lot yesterday that you guys did. Ben, kind of what is do you have a consensus, I guess, Final Four or a consensus winner based on all the pools and bracket contests you're in?
Consensus winner, definitely. I think that Virginia's. I know people, and I get it, but I think Virginia's clearly the best team. That was not hard. It was more structuring. Who do I want them to place and where does Duke lose? Michigan State, I have coming out on most. On the other side, I don't really feel great about that. And I tried to tailor it, as we've always talked about. I'm in a pool with, a smaller dollar pool with a ton of people. And I will say my super aggressive play, I have Arizona State in the Final Four in a bracket. In that one, really, really aggressive. But Texas Tech, in the pool that I care most about, someone like that, someone like Gonzaga, pretty chalky, centered around Virginia, cutting down the nets.
Yeah, I hate to just agree and make it like a boring show, but I'm in agreement with Virginia. I think they are the best team in the country. I think they have a chip on their shoulder, to say the least. We didn't really talk about Virginia much, but I mean, people forget that arguably their best player, DeAndre Hunter, did not play in that game last year. Clearly it got away from them last year, and if that doesn't leave a sour taste in your mouth and want to come back this year and win the tournament, I don't know what would.
They're not the same team either.
Exactly.
I know it seems that way, but this Virginia team is by far the best offensive unit they've ever had. Yeah. Defensively, they're not as good, I'll admit that, but this is not a team where it's like, if they fall behind by 10, it's over. That's really inaccurate.
Yeah, in the past, these good Virginia teams had been incredibly defensive team, but their offense, was always kind of the weak point. But like you said, this year, this team can actually score. They are a much different team. Like, their backcourt is incredible. DeAndre Hunter, like I said, is great. So I'm on board there. Virginia also number 1 in 3-point defense. So still their defense is pretty excellent. They're the number 1 ranked team on KenPom. I'm a big fan of Virginia. Any parting words, boys? I guess we should leave everybody to go, call in sick, watch games all day. This really is kind of basketball nirvana these next couple days. 16 games today, 16 tomorrow.
All right, welcome to Bracket 8.
Ben, any kind of final thoughts, plans for the day? What are you thinking?
No, I'll be walking downstairs and turn on the TVs and getting ready. But no, I think have fun with it, of course. Obviously, if you're in our Slack, we're going to be talking about, trying to pick some spots. If you do like to wager on some games, hop in there. It's always a lot of fun, if nothing else, to just watch a great day of basketball.
Yeah, for sure. Alex, everybody's got a perfect bracket for about at least an hour and a half now. Are we going to just sit back and relish our winnings, or what are we looking at today?
Yeah, I think the most likely outcome is my bracket and everyone else's is going to be busted within the first few games.
Yeah.
But I'm not that worried because with DFS, my lineups get busted every day, but then you just get on the next day. So yeah. I think that's one thing now that we've all built our brackets is tomorrow let's get on the DFS and make some good prize pools, and it'll be a lot of fun.
Yeah, that's, I think, the best point, right? Everybody loves brackets, and we've gotten to the point now where that has locked. There's really no opportunity to continue in a bracket pool unless you have some sort of like second chance pool. But that's even more reason to jump into DFS. There's certainly slates later today, and then tomorrow, of course, we'll have a bunch of huge slates. Like I said, 16 games tomorrow. So anyone who is interested in learning more and getting into DFS, of course, as I mentioned, we have a college basketball March Madness premium package on the site. It's $30 for the entire tournament. That gets you projections, ownership, player projections. Like Ben said, access to our Slack channel, which is very valuable. We'll have a lot of people talking brackets, talking betting, talking DFS, basically anything you could want. We'll have somebody in there talking about. So that's a really important component of the deal. So make sure to go to our site and check that out. I'm excited that the madness has arrived. It feels like it's been a long time coming. I'm excited for today and this entire weekend. We'll certainly be back to talk more from a betting perspective and certainly DFS as the tournament progresses. I am Jordan Frank. You guys, any final words? Everybody's going to go watch some basketball.
Yep.
Yeah, just thanks everyone for supporting our site. And make sure to check out our March Madness content throughout the tournament. We're going to have a lot of DFS and also betting content. My rankings are free, and then you can sign up for an all-access package or our college basketball to get the projections and ownership. And really looking forward to playing some DFS with it.
Well said. All right, guys. Well, enjoy the basketball today, and we will talk to you soon.